Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Our armed forces have been extraordinary. There's never been anything like it militarily. Everyone is talking about it, and tonight I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion.
The order came suddenly. A reinforced Marine infantry battalion from the 2nd Marine Division, supported by heavy Army tanks from the 1st Infantry Division, was given a clear mission: capture and hold the high ground overlooking the narrowest part of the Strait of Hormuz. Aboard the Tripoli and other amphibious ships, stationed 70 nautical miles out at sea, Marines and soldiers moved immediately when the order arrived. In the lower decks, tank crews got to work on their M1A2 Abrams tanks. Mechanics checked the tracks, tested the suspension, and ran the powerful turbine engines at full power. Gun barrels were cleaned and aimed properly. Fire control systems were tested, and thermal sights were adjusted for nighttime use. Ammunition racks were filled with a mix of armor-piercing and explosive rounds. Every shell was counted and locked in safely. Crews also checked machine guns, smoke launchers, and protective armor panels to make sure the tanks were ready for the beach landing and the push inland. At the same time, Marine infantry focused on their personal weapons and equipment. Squad leaders ran careful pre-combat checks. Each Marine cleaned his rifle completely, replaced worn parts, added fresh oil, and zeroed his optics. Magazines were loaded with the right ammunition and firmly attached. Grenadiers prepared their launchers with high explosive and smoke rounds. Machine gunners checked their weapons, loaded ammunition belts, and confirmed everything was working correctly. Backpacks were packed carefully. Each Marine carried spare clothing, hygiene supplies, first aid items including tourniquets and bandages, high-calorie rations, extra ammunition, water bladders, and basic tools. Every pack was weighed, balanced, and checked by team leaders to make sure nothing was loose or noisy. Body armor plates were seated correctly. Night vision goggles were powered on and focused. Helmets were fitted with communication gear and batteries. Paratroopers from the attached airborne units rigged their parachutes carefully. Main chutes were packed and attached to the back harness, with reserve chutes secured to the chest. Static lines were folded neatly and double-checked by jump masters. Weapons were strapped tightly. Rucksacks were prepared with lowering lines so they could be dropped safely before landing. Heavy equipment loading began. Abrams tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, and amphibious combat vehicles rolled slowly up the ramps into the ship's well decks. Navy crew and Marine engineers worked together, chaining down every vehicle using heavy straps and steel cables to handle the rough sea crossing. LCAC hovercraft, large air-cushion vessels capable of carrying a full Abrams tank or several combat vehicles, were loaded in order. Tanks were positioned precisely on the deck and secured tightly for the high-speed ride to shore. Amphibious combat vehicles were driven aboard as well, their crews ready to move from ship to beach to inland in one smooth motion. Paratroopers moved to the airfield, where large C-17 aircraft were waiting with their ramps lowered. Jump masters walked the lines one last time, checking every piece of equipment. Static lines, reserves, helmets, and weapons were all confirmed ready. The C-17s would fly hundreds of paratroopers directly over the target area for a night drop, seizing key ground from behind enemy lines. The assault launched in perfectly timed waves under complete darkness. First, the LCAC hovercraft came out of the well decks, their powerful fans lifting them onto a cushion of air. They crossed the Gulf at over 40 knots, rushing toward the Iranian coast. Inside, tank crews sat strapped in with engines running, waiting for the ramps to drop. Combat vehicles rode alongside, weapons ready. At the same moment, the C-17s reached the drop zones. Green lights came on inside the aircraft. Paratroopers stood up, hooked their static lines, and moved toward the open ramps. When the signal came, they stepped into the rushing night air. Hundreds of parachutes opened as the troopers fell fast toward the high ground behind the Iranian positions. They formed up into assault teams the moment their boots touched the ground. When the LCACs hit the surf zone, their front ramps crashed down onto the beach. Abrams tanks roared forward, their tracks throwing up sand as they moved from sea to land and pushed inland immediately. Combat vehicles followed, dropping off Marine infantry who ran to take cover. The paratroopers who had jumped from the C-17s linked up quickly, sharing fresh information about enemy positions. The fight for the key point was intense and brutal. Iranian defenders opened fire with machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and mortars from positions dug into the rocky hills. Abrams tanks raised their 120 mm guns and fired directly at bunkers and fortified trenches. The rounds hit hard, sending rock, dust, and fire into the air. Marine infantry advanced using the tank fire as cover, clearing trenches with grenades and accurate rifle fire. Paratroopers hit from the rear, surrounding enemy positions and blocking any escape. The battle became chaotic as Iranian forces counterattacked hard. Anti-tank missiles flew toward the Abrams. Small arms fire swept across the advancing Marines. Artillery shells crashed nearby. But the American push never slowed. Marines and soldiers used their combat vehicles as moving cover and called in mortar support. Casualties were taken on both sides. Wounded were treated on the move by trained first responders applying tourniquets and bandages while the fight continued. When resistance hardened along the final ridgeline, ground forces sent exact target coordinates to naval ships offshore. The ships responded immediately, launching missiles that struck enemy command posts and artillery with precision. Above, F-35B jets from the US America provided close air support, dropping guided bombs on reinforced positions that ground troops could not reach directly. The combined attack proved too much. Tanks gave direct fire support. Infantry cleared buildings and trenches one by one. Paratroopers held the high ground. Air and naval strikes destroyed the remaining strong points. Iranian defenses slowly broke apart. The last major positions fell after a final coordinated push of fire and movement. American forces raised their flag over the captured high ground, the key position that now gave them full control and observation over the Strait of Hormuz. With the objective taken, Marines and attached infantry set up defensive perimeters, evacuated their wounded, and waited for supplies arriving by helicopter. Small pockets of fighting continued in the surrounding hills, but the vital ground was firmly held. The capture of this position immediately reduced pressure on the strait. Allied monitors reported the first groups of oil tankers beginning cautious passage through the reopened lanes, escorted by coalition warships. The narrow waters, long threatened by Iranian forces, were beginning to see commercial traffic once again.